It was a moment I never saw coming. One minute I was just sitting there, and the next, my son looked at me with a suggestion that left me completely speechless. "Mom," he said, his voice calm but serious, "why don't you just sit on my lap?" My heart skipped a beat, and I couldn't believe what I had just heard. What happened next is something I'll never forget. Hey, this is one of the most personal stories I've ever shared. I never thought I'd be telling anyone about this. But here we are. Sometimes life throws you a curveball, and you're left questioning everything you thought you knew. If you've ever felt like your world shifted in a single moment, you'll understand why I'm sharing this. Make sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and leave a comment. I really want to know what you think about this story. Your support means so much, and it keeps me motivated to bring you more stories like this. Let's get started. It all started a few months ago, just after my son, Alex, turned 22. Alex has always been the kind of son a mother dreams of, kind, thoughtful, and protective. After his dad left us when he was just a toddler, we've been each other's whole world. I worked hard to provide for him, and he grew up to be my rock. Over the years, we've developed a bond that's deeper than words can describe. But recently, I'd started noticing subtle changes in the way he interacted with me. He'd grown into a confident, self-assured man. It's not that he ever stopped being caring or thoughtful, but there was a maturity about him now that felt new. He'd ask how my day was going in a way that felt more intimate, more invested. At first, I chalked it up to him maturing. After all, every parent dreams of raising a child who turns out as wonderful as Alex did. But the dynamic between us began to shift in ways I couldn't quite put my finger on. I'd catch him watching me sometimes, not in a creepy way, but in a way that felt different. Like he was studying me, trying to understand me on a level that went beyond the usual mother-son relationship. I told myself I was imagining it, but deep down, I knew something had changed. Then, one quiet Sunday afternoon, everything came to a head. I was sitting in the living room, flipping through a magazine. The sun was streaming through the windows, casting a warm glow on the furniture. It was one of those rare, peaceful moments where everything feels just right. Alex walked in, his usual playful grin on his face. He sat down beside me and leaned back, his body language relaxed, but confident. "Hey, Mom," he said, his voice soft, but with a hint of mischief. "You look exhausted. You should let me take care of you today." I laughed it off. "Alex, I'm fine. I don't need you to fuss over me." But he wasn't letting it go. "No, seriously. You do so much for everyone else. Just let me do something nice for you." Before I could protest, he took the magazine out of my hands and set it aside. His movements were gentle, almost deliberate, and it caught me off guard. I've always appreciated how thoughtful Alex is, but this felt different. It wasn't just a son being nice to his mom. It felt more personal, more intimate. And then he said it. "Wait, why don't you sit on my lap?" At first, I thought I'd misheard him. "What?" I asked, my voice tinged with confusion. "You look uncomfortable sitting like that," he said casually. "Come on, I don't mind. It'll be more comfortable for you." I stared at him, my heart pounding in my chest. My mind was racing, trying to process what he just said. Was this a joke? Was he teasing me? But his expression was calm and sincere, and that made it even harder to brush off. "Alex," I said, choosing my words carefully, "that's not appropriate." He shrugged, his eyes meeting mine with an intensity I hadn't seen before. "Why not?" "It's not a big deal, Mom. I just want you to be comfortable." There was a strange tension in the room, a heaviness that made it hard to breathe. I didn't know what to say or how to react. Part of me wanted to laugh it off and pretend it never happened, but another part of me couldn't ignore the sincerity in his voice. It was like he genuinely believed he was doing something kind, something normal. For a moment, I thought about leaving the room. But then he looked at me with those searching eyes, and it was like he was waiting for me to make a decision that would change everything. It was a Sunday afternoon. The sun streamed through the windows, casting a warm glow over the living room. I was sitting on the couch, flipping through a magazine, letting the quiet hum of the day wash over me. The aroma of freshly brewed coffee lingered in the air, mingling with the faint scent of lavender from the diffuser on the side table. Alex walked in, his footsteps light yet deliberate. He had that playful grin on his face, the kind that always meant he was up to something. "Hey, Mom," he said, plopping down beside me with a casual ease. His presence always brought a certain liveliness to the room, like a spark igniting dormant energy. "You look tired. Why don't you relax a little?" I smiled, brushing it off as I flipped another page of the magazine. "I'm fine, Alex, just catching up on some reading." But Alex wasn't one to let things go. His gaze softened, and a hint of concern laced his voice. "No, seriously, you've been working too hard lately? Let me take care of you for a change." I raised an eyebrow, amused by his sudden earnestness. "Oh, really? And how exactly do you plan on doing that?" Before I could say another word, he reached out and gently took the magazine from my hands, setting it on the coffee table. His actions were tender, almost reverent, and I felt a flicker of surprise. Alex had always been considerate, but this felt different, more intentional, as if he'd been planning it. Then, out of nowhere, he said it. "Why don't you sit on my lap?" The words hung in the air like an uninvited guest, loud and jarring against the serene backdrop of the afternoon. My heart skipped a beat, and I froze, my mind scrambling to make sense of what I'd just heard. "What?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper, hoping I'd misunderstood him. "You look uncomfortable over there," he explained, his tone light and casual, as if he were suggesting something as mundane as switching seats. "Come on, I don't mind. It'll be more comfortable for you." I stared at him, searching his face for a trace of humor or mischief. Was this some kind of elaborate joke? But Alex's expression was sincere, almost too sincere, and that made it even harder to process. "Alex," I began, choosing my words carefully, That's not really appropriate." He shrugged, leaning back against the couch with a relaxed air that contrasted sharply with the tightness building in my chest. "Why not?" "It's not a big deal, Mom. I just want you to be comfortable." I opened my mouth to respond, but found that no words came out. The room suddenly felt smaller, the air thicker, as if the weight of his statement had shifted the very atmosphere. For a fleeting moment, I considered getting up and leaving, putting physical distance between us to match the emotional distance I needed. But his eyes, those earnest, searching eyes, held me in place. They weren't just looking at me, they were looking through me, peeling back layers I hadn't even realized were there. "Alice," I said, finally, my voice steadier than I felt. "I appreciate your concern, but I'm perfectly fine where I am." He nodded slowly, his gaze never wavering. "Okay," he said softly, a hint of disappointment flickering across his face. The moment passed, but its imprint lingered like a shadow stretching into the evening. The rest of the day carried on as usual, me preparing dinner, Alex retreating to his room. But the memory of that brief exchange clung to me like an unanswered question. What had prompted him to say that? Was it an innocent gesture, misinterpreted, or something deeper that I wasn't ready to confront? As I lay in bed that night staring at the ceiling, I couldn't shake the feeling that the moment wasn't as fleeting as I wanted it to be. It was a ripple in still waters, hinting at currents beneath the surface. And I wasn't sure if I was ready to dive in to see what lay below. And then I did something I never thought I'd do. I nodded. For a second, I questioned my own sanity. Why was I doing this? Was it curiosity? Was it the disarming innocence in his tone? Or maybe it was the way the world seemed to slow down, as if it were giving me time to decide. Whatever the reason, before I could overthink, my body moved on its own. I stood up, each step toward him feeling heavier than the last. My heart pounded like a drum in my chest, and my mind raced with a torrent of conflicting thoughts. When I finally reached him, there was a pause, a fleeting moment of hesitation where I almost turned back. But then his eyes met mine, calm and steady, and something inside me told me it was okay. As I sat down, I felt his arms wrap around me, not forcefully, but with a steadying presence. It was a sensation I couldn't quite describe, reassuring yet unfamiliar. "See?" he said softly, his voice barely above a whisper. "Isn't this better?" I couldn't bring myself to answer. My throat felt tight, and my words seemed trapped somewhere between my heart and my mind. The moment was surreal, like a scene pulled from someone else's story. I wasn't just sitting on his lap. I was crossing an invisible line, one I hadn't even realized existed. The warmth of his body against mine, the strength of his arms gently supporting me, it was overwhelming. And in that overwhelming mix of emotions, something stirred deep within me. That's when I realized it. There was a connection between us that went beyond the ordinary bond of a mother and son. It wasn't something I had chosen to feel. It wasn't something I wanted to feel. But it was there, raw and undeniable. The weight of that truth pressed down on me, leaving me breathless. I wish I could say that everything went back to normal after that day, but it didn't. That moment didn't just change things, it fractured something inside me, leaving cracks I wasn't sure how to mend. It opened a door I wasn't ready to walk through, and stepping back out felt nearly impossible. Alex and I have since had long, difficult conversations about what happened. We've both agreed to set clear boundaries moving forward, understanding the importance of keeping our relationship grounded in what's healthy and appropriate. But even with those boundaries in place, the truth remains. Nothing will ever be the same. If there's one thing this experience has taught me, it's that relationships are complex and layered. The people we think we know best can still surprise us, sometimes in ways we're not prepared for. Navigating these emotions has been a journey, one filled with confusion, self-reflection, and a determination to find clarity. The road ahead isn't easy, but I've come to understand that healing requires facing the uncomfortable truths head-on. It's a process, and I'm committed to it. If you've ever faced a moment that challenged your understanding of relationships or yourself, remember, you're not alone. Share your story or thoughts in the comments below, and let's navigate life's complexities together. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more heartfelt discussions.